The Age of Invention, often also called the Age of Aristocrats, was triggered by the elegant concept of the propeller. In the previous ages, air travel had been very expensive and slow. Usually, ships were carved from a fagarium-rich stone and propelled forwards by many rowers with giant paddles. Nobody had yet thought of a way to load or unload the fagarium, which would make airships hover, so the airships were fixed to a certain height, making it relatively impractical for most civilizations, except for those living in the flying mountains. On the other hand, travel over land was often full of dangers. Not only were the roads constantly besieged by wild animals and beasts, but also by robbers, pirates, foreign raiding parties, and to top it all off, not a lot of material could be transported on any single cart. Initially, when the propeller came along, everyone first saw in it a more elegant way to move ships. It was not until 720 YT that they began to use draft animals to power the propellers. This, the technology of venting fagarium, refueling it, and further improvements in aerodynamics led to airships which were eventually able to travel up to 100 kilometers per hour as the crow flies. This shrunk the world, as many countries started to build airports between their most important trading cities. It revolutionized trade, shrinking maritime trade and giving landlocked countries more leverage. It also empowered countries which had no sufficient access to dragons to still maintain an air force, and it created even more stupefying amounts of wealth within the few countries which had fagarium possessions in their territory. It is because of the subsequent array of discoveries and adjustments to these airfaring systems that this age was named the Age of Invention, although some began giving it another name, the Age of Aristocrats. Because the world was shrinking, trade was more powerful than ever, and the newly operating companies had soon after, for the first time, access to a new invention, the stock market. Powerful, private and publicly owned companies arose. They were the pillars of modern society, providing many services, especially in the empires which were on the rise, and searching for allies to consolidate their place in the world. But the main reason why they became so powerful was because Freya pioneered what is known as the Skalda system. An increasing amount of states would choose a handful of companies which were dedicated a certain sector in the economy. They would have almost unrestricted access to cheap loans and would be bailed out every time they failed. That made the domestic markets highly competitive to all other countries who did not use the system. But it had the side effect of making some companies stronger than the states which were supposed to control them, and soon the laws began to warp to reflect this. Eventually, states who started to push back found themselves in heavy resistance. Conglomerates of companies which formed across borders were preparing to upend the age of empires and states in favor of an age in which corporations would run the world. The most important of these alliances called themselves the Atra and Medellin. This led to a war which was fought all over the Atlas for almost 10 years between 813 and 822 YT. This conflict ended with a statesman victorious and dealt a heavy and debilitating blow to the conglomerates which would never again rise to become the governing entity in any part of the Atlas. Still, corporations and investors held great power, and trade networks continued to grow and shift. During this time, the moral revolution occurred, which put philosophy front and center and led to a decrease in wars everywhere as new universities sprang up across the whole Atlas. Around 950 YT, aristocrats started investing in a set of companies on the stock markets in Andalun. These companies were educating Taraki mages with the help of a university mage order. This order had recently opened up exchange of expertise, willing to share its secrets for the greater good, leading to a small period known as the Conflict of the Orders. As these companies were now able to educate Taraki en masse, it became financially feasible to send them to assist farmers with food production. This led to farmers being able to take on successfully larger fields, more than returning investment on the loan and state-subsidized Taraki they hired to keep the bugs away, keep crops healthy, help plant, and decrease the time plants took to grow. This led to a massive spike in food production, which within a decade halved the number of famines that took place. Because of this, vast investments were poured into these agricultural ventures. Many different companies offered this service. Many governments bought these Taraki bonds made from stocks from these different companies and stored them as secure assets. Most notably, as the Immortal Bank ran out of precious metal reserves, it bought these bonds and changed the peg of its issued currency, the royal letter, from the gold standard to a new Taraki bond standard. All of this worked well. Investors began to search for places to deploy their capital, and a frenzy of investment sprees reigned upon the whole continent, both on the wise and unwise investments. But they were all soon taken by surprise.